Hey guys, OG Albina here, and Terastalization is going to be broken in Draft League. I really wish it wasn't, but with the new information we have about how the mechanic works, I really do think it's going to be just as, if not more, broken than Dynamax in the format. Maybe a little bit less, and maybe we can kind of tweak it and make it a little bit less potent, but the information we have now, man, it could get really out of hand in a singles Draft League sense really fast. So today I'm going to be giving my thoughts and my precursor thoughts going into the generation before I actually obviously get my hands on the game. And, obviously things could change, but this is just my prediction going in, is that it is going to be banned pretty much universally at least a few months into the generation. So let me know what you guys think of these little more freeform type of videos. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy it, as well as sub to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000, and I would really appreciate if you help me get there by the end of the year. And yeah, drop a comment to be entered into our giveaway of a copy of Scarlet and Violet. Okay, I'm going to pop the mechanic on screen in 3, 2, 1. If you don't want to be spoiled on how exactly it works and you want to go in blind, this is your opportunity. I don't really think this is a spoiler, so I'm not going to spoiler tag it. But, especially because this information comes from people getting, like, legitimate playtests, not even, like, the game leaking. But yeah, that being said, I'm going to jump into it in 3, 2, 1. This is a great graphic from Central Leaks. I have them on the side, I guess, right here, that they posted, kind of explaining how the Terastal phenomenon works, in the settings. Now, the first part we already knew, right? Let's say we have a Charizard, and we Terastal water it. It loses its fire typing, and it turns into a pure water typing. We understand that. That makes sense. That's already a really cool buff in its own right, because we can take Pokemon that have lackluster defensive typings, or turn and make them better, or turn disadvantageous matchups into advantageous ones as we Terastalize and things like that. So that's definitely a really cool aspect of this, what do you call it, the mechanic. What gets a little bit broken is when we look at the offense portion. Originally, what we thought and what we were kind of told was that if I turned into a Terastal Water Charizard, I have stab water attacks. I'm not a fire type or a flying type anymore, so I don't have stab, fire, or flying. But what we have learned now is that the Terastal phenomenon changes your defensive typing, but offensively, you still keep your fire and flying stab, which I don't think you guys realize how broken that really is. The fact that you can, in a very broad sense, the fact that you can keep your offensive benefits and the offensive type matchups that you can have with fire, flying, water, not even necessarily that that's the broken one, but just the idea of being able to keep the offensive benefits of your typing while potentially getting rid of and mitigating the defensive weaknesses of your typing. That's really ridiculous, having 3 offensive stabs but 1 defensive typing. And a lot of the times, like, for example, Pure Water is an incredible pure solo defensive typing. Being a pure ground type is a great defensive typing, and it gives ground coverage to everything with Terra Blast. So I think that this mechanic is going to be insane based off of that. The fact that you can, no drawback, still get stab boost on my Flamethrower and my Hurricane, but then have a base 80 water stab move that I can just throw off for shits and giggles. And also, just like, not be weak to rock anymore. Not be weak to, I guess you wouldn't be weak to ground in Charizard's case. Not be weak to water. Resist water now. And now you're a water type that can like push through other waters because you still have that triple stab combination, which is really insane. Now there's one Pokemon that gets quadruple stab, and that's Delmize, which is pretty cool. But I don't think that's why it's broken. I think it's just kind of funny in general. But okay, now with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on. We are gonna, well, let me cover this first as well. This is if you same type Terra. You'll obviously get a 2-time stab on your fire type moves, basically giving you adaptability. It seems like not accounting for your own ability, which is also pretty damn nuts. I mean, think of something like, I know this example has been beaten to death, but like a Terra, no, that's not true. Like, a Terra, there we go. A Terra Normal Porygon Z, which I don't even think is going to be in the game, actually. A Terra Normal Porygon Z with adaptability, and then getting that 2-time stab multiplier on top of it. Those Tri-Attacks don't have switch-ins. You're probably 2AK and Blissey, to be completely honest. But, yeah, so this Charizard, for example, would have 2 times boost on its fire stab, and then still have the flying stab on top of that, but lose that defensive typing and flying that could be hindering it in so many different instances. So, it's pretty nuts, in my opinion. Like, I think this is a really insane, there's some pretty insane possibilities in here, and I kind of want to talk about 5 Pokemon really quick. I didn't, like, super in-depth research. This is literally me looking in 15 minutes before the this video, and kind of being like, man, that would be really annoying to deal with. That would be nuts. That would be nuts. That would be nuts. That would be nuts. We're gonna kind of go through these Pokemon and just kind of talk about, like, these are just me initially looking, and not even taking into account the metagame that's going to transpire when the new Pokemon get added, not even thinking of the new Pokemon themselves, these are just old gen staples that are going to be nuts with this. And I did not touch on all of them. I just picked on some really quick ones I noticed right off rip. Now, granted, these are all incredible Pokemon, but this Terastal phenomenon is going to set them over the top if we do end up allowing it. The first one that came to mind for me was Hydreigon, and I have a memory kind of indicating which typing I think it should have. And when you think Hydreigon, you obviously think it's really big debilitating weakness to fairy types, having that 4 times weakness to fairies and stabs being resisted. But Hydreigon does have access to Flash Cannon, which would be a better option than Terra Blast, because they're both presumed to be base 80 power, but this you have the Spadef drop chance, so you would obviously run Flash Cannon instead. Right, and it's useful outside of terrain. So, like, if you have to switch, you still have that Flash Cannon stuff coverage a little bit later on. So, the offensive synergy is there, right? Now we get stab Flash Cannons that are going to 2-hit KO things like Sylveons. I'm actually curious as to that calc, so we're going to check it really quick. Again, not much research went into this beforehand, so we're going to have this. I'm going to change it to a Steel type into a Sylveon. Let's see, did this work? Bam. Steel. That puts you to a pretty high chance to 2-hit KO really Spadef Sylveon off rocks. That's not counting if you're like Life Orb or Specs or whatever. Yeah, that's just a raw 2-hit KO and even like max Spadef Sylveon. It's actually a guaranteed 2-hit KO. That's a pretty interesting calc, right? Now we can also obviously look at the type effectiveness of a implication like this, right? So I'm on this Pokemon Attack Type coverage website. We'll use all of these for, you know, all of these ones as we go. So let's go ahead and pick Dragon, Dark, and obviously, where is it? Steel. We can calculate and see that it is only resisted by the Lucario line, or just Lucario, I guess, the Pawniard line, Cobalion, and Zamazenta. Keep in mind, you have coverage for all of these Pokemon. You have Flamethrower and Earth Power. These Pokemon are also not typically very Spadef bulky. Now, Zama obviously is, because Zama is very bulky in general. But the other Pokemon, they do not switch into Hydreigon. They do not switch into Life Orb Dracos from a Hydreigon. They do not switch into Earth Power from a Hydreigon. You also outspeed all of them minus Cobalion, and with Cobalion, you can outspeed it with a Scarf. So, these aren't good checks to Hydreigon whatsoever. So this type coverage is not only pretty much perfect, it's also incredible defensively, allowing you to resist Fairy, and also avoid Earthquakes as a Steel type with Levitate. Like, this is what I mean, like, the multifaceted things that this type combination, like, really offers, and this Terastal phenomenon could potentially do, is really, really insane, to be completely honest, and I think it's something that we should definitely mention. Now, we're going to talk about another Terastal Steel, Dragon type, and Dragonite. Another Pokemon that I think could definitely benefit from it. One, again, defensively, with being a Dragon Flying type, losing that 4 times Ice weakness, and just straight up resisting it with your Steel memory is incredible. You're typically not going to be taking on a lot of grounds and fighting types with your Dragonite. So that's obvious, or like they're not going to be taking on your Dragonite, which is awesome, obviously. So that's another added benefit to it. You have Iron Head coverage, which is, again, base 80 power. We don't have to put the Terra Blast on it, which means that we can kind of free up our moveset and work outside of a Terraform, which is great. Multi-scale plus a Steel typing just seems really, really nuts, honestly. And again, very solid type coverage overall. We're going to go ahead and look at Flying Dragon Steel. Now, there are some Pokemon, obviously Steel types, are going to resist this combination, but you do have access to Earthquake and Fire Punch. And that's another option I kind of want to talk about, in the sense that, while this defensively is much better, offensively, turning into a Fire typing and having Dragon, Flying, Fire, that is resisted by the Diancie, and Carbink, which I don't even know if it's in the game, and even then, Carbink is a terrible Pokemon that you're not typically going to see in a lot of instances, and Diancie is maybe one matchup in a draft league, and that's it. And if it's Mega Dia on like a Natdex format, it's not switching into Dragonite all too well. And again, we still have that Earthquake coverage and things like that. So really, that's just a small handful of Pokemon that can switch into that defensively, which I think is really, really cool. So, I guess not really cool, really scary, I suppose. So, yeah, now we're going to move away from Dragons. We're going to move on to Volcarona here. And I was thinking Ground Memory Volcarona, because again, when you think of Volcarona, its most debilitating weakness being that 4 times Rock weakness. Now we resist that, which is incredible. The weaknesses to ground are not Pokemon that are going to want to take on Bug and Fire Volcarona, which is also really nice. And again, we can choose when we Terastalize, and we can beat down those Pokemon if they expect us to Ground Memory, or Terastalize ground, and then we can Terra ground when we really need to take on those rock types, and things like that. Now, another thing it does, obviously it lets us hit rock types, which is incredible. It also gives Volcarona just a way of just raw beating Heatran now. Like, now, even hitting Power Ground before, it just wasn't as strong. Now you have a base 80 Terra Blast that is just going to nuke Heatran 100%. Let's again, hypothetically, look at this Volcarona. Excuse me. Volcarona. Go to offensive cover stance. We're going to go ahead and give ourselves the ground typing. We are going to make Flamethrower base 80 power. Here, so you guys can see me. And we are going to make it a ground type move. Okay? So, there we go. We obviously see that it is a ground type move now. Let's go ahead and get ourselves up to +1. And let's look at a specially defensive Heatran. Specially defensive? Oh, you take 150% min. You're like, oh, and Shuckleberry is a possibility. Heatrans and Shuckleberry. That's fine. 2 rock switch-ins and you're dead. Like, if we're calcing that, look, I moved it down to 88, put rocks on the field, and now it's an 81% chance to knock it out. Yeah, it's, again, it's a lot. I don't know. I feel like this mechanic is just too strong. I feel like these things are going to be too hard to switch into. Speaking of Pokemon that are going to be too hard to switch into, Tyranitar. With a Ghost Memory, offensively, Rock, Dark, and Ghost is incredible. Not only do you get rid of that debilitating 4x fighting weakness, you're immune to it now, and you just rock them with that Terra Blast, or Terra Blast. Now you do have Shadow Claw, I think, but it is weaker than what do you call it? Why am I blanking on it? Terra Blast. So that might not be super advantageous. So let's go ahead and look at Rock, Ghost, Dark. We are going to calculate. There are 13 Pokemon is not very effective against. A lot of these Pokemon naturally check the shit out of T-Tar anyways, in the sense of like Crocodile, Scrafty, not Bisharp, Beware. Really, that's it actually. The other ones actually do not appreciate switching into it. And then you have Pokemon that kind of also all get rocked by Superpower coverage or Body Press coverage or something like that. Superpower is another great point because if, again, we're going a little bit more offensive like we did with the Dragonite with the Terra Fire Dragonite, we can change this to a Fighting Terra. And there are 4 Pokemon in the game that resist it, and it is the Hisuian Sneasel and the Krogunk Toxicroak line, which are not Pokemon known for their bulk. You hit more than half of the game super effectively with just those 3 moves. Which, it's just insane. I DD up and I just win? Is that what's happening? And these are Pokemon that would typically switch into T-Tar to try and revenge kill it with their stab fighting attacks. And now it's just not going to work. You're going to live those hits now. And that's terrifying. That's crazy. And again, you have Earthquake coverage potentially and things like that. Like, it's really nuts. I think like with an Assault Vest and Terra, like a Terra typing, this T-Tar could be just an absolute menace to try and deal with over the long term of a game. It's just, I don't know, there's something inherently broken about Pokemon being able to change their types mid-game and having 3 stabs without the negative drawback of, without the negative drawback of having those other typings and things like that, but just getting extra stabs for free on typings that they actually aren't. So, I don't know. Lastly, we're going to talk about Gyarados. I feel like this one's kind of been beaten into the ground, but Ground Memory Gyarados is, again, phenomenal defensively because it takes the weaknesses of Gyarados and it flips them on their heads. Now you're immune to the electrical type attacks that are going to come your way. You have access to Earthquake, which is much stronger than Terra Blast, so again, very usable outside of it. And if we look at the type combination of Water, Flying, and Ground, it is, again, phenomenal. There's not a single Pokemon in the game that resists those 3 typings. Now, granted, Gyarados' Flying Stab is a little bit iffy, but even then, you have great coverage to circumvent such things, and who knows, maybe Gyarados finally gets Brave Bird, and then we can ban him or something. I don't know. Brave Bird Gyarados would be crazy. Or just get some kind of flying move that's not bounce. I mean, I could see it. We're seeing random buffs to Pokemon throughout the generations all the time. But regardless, this stab combination, it is quite simply not resisted by anything, and again, hits more than half of the game super effectively. I don't know. I really don't know, guys. It is, these are all of the Pokemon that you hit super effectively right here. It's pretty damn strong. So, I personally, with the information that we have now been given, think that Terra is just going to be broken. I could see us potentially making Terra captains. Maybe you can only turn into the same Terra type that, like, turn into a Terra type that you already were. Like, your Charizard can only turn into a fire or flying type. And maybe it's a tier 3 and below thing, a tier 5 captain thing, a, you know, Terra captain thing where you have to announce your Terramon and your Terra type so that people can play around a little bit better. But the offensive and defensive capabilities of a mechanic like this are just unparalleled. It could get to some really crazy situations. I'm gonna have to play test it. Now, I am obviously going to play test it, and I would love for it to work. I'm going to be doing the tiers for a Wi-Fi leak that is going to be starting up right after Scarlet and Violet drops, like within a couple, 2-3 weeks after the games drop. We'll be having our week 1 games, so I'll be playing and testing with these extensively. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you have any other cool combinations of Terra types and what have it, let me know in the comments. And yeah, that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time. Bye.